Hello YouTube. Today I'm at the Jeffers Petroglyphs. It's near Jeffers, Minnesota, and we're in the middle of a big prairie, and they've got it's a natural prairie sculpted by Mother Nature, and you know what it would have looked like back in the day. So, big question a lot of people have: pictoglyphs and petroglyphs. What's the difference? Well, pictoglyphs are, you know, you paint it on a rock, and it may weather away. You know, we've seen some way back at the Arches. There were some that were sheltered from the sun. Saw some at Painted Desert and a while back. But petroglyphs are chiseled into the rock, so they'll last longer and whatnot. So I'm going to get up here and see what we can see. Well, I don't know if you can see them, but right out there are a few fence posts. I think what are fence posts doing in the middle of a prairie? Well, this used to be a big farm field, and in '74 Minnesota Historical Society planted a few grass varieties on 50 acres of cropland and basically recreated the prairie. And I remember reading back then about projects like this, and where do you find, you know, the prairie grasses? It wasn't like people back in the 1800s when they started plowing this up or keeping the seeds. Turns out that they looked for old family cemeteries, and as you drive through the countryside, a lot of times you see the old little cemeteries that are off, and they're like 4 or 5, 6 feet up off of the rest of the land around. Well, that's because they farmed the land around it and didn't farm the cemetery. So the land, tilling it, and the water running off, and just wore the land down. But in the cemeteries, especially the old ones that have been neglected, let go, those tended to have the original prairie grasses in them. So it's a little nugget of stuff that's in my head. I never know what's in there. So the stones we're about to come up to, or the stone is 1.6 billion years old. The plant species around here probably came into this area 9,000 years ago, and the carvings on the rocks are probably about 5,000 years old. So we'll get up here when the crowd dies down a little bit. So we got turtle, and not sure what that is. What do you think,
corn.
People? What?
Corn, we think. It's down here. The tassels up at the top.
There's 5,000 of them. So we're gonna move along and see what else we can see. So this one is, you can see it's a paddle. It's a throwing spear, but you use a hooked stick to give you more force and throw it farther, so you can throw a lighter spear farther. But that rectangle in there is a weight, which gives a little bit more oomph at the end. And if you're hunting bison, which I think that was one, maybe?
Yep.
Right in there. If you're hunting bison, you definitely want penetration. You don't want to just tick them off, because it's going to hurt. So this would be what that curved throwing stick would look like. So the paddle is predates the bow and arrow. So the people that were here before they developed the bow would have been using that. And if you've ever read Clan of the Cave Bear, that whole series, they go into a lot of detail about fictionalized how the spear was invented and so on. Okay, so these two lines, natural lines here, are perfect natural alignment to the summer solstice. And in between the two lines, these wet spots are various symbols. But when the summer solstice, the shaft of light comes through here, and then it spreads out. So all through this area, there are more carvings, more things, telling a whole story that we can't figure out. So here's some sacred symbols that were carved in here, and the things like the horned turtle and the circle, and somewhere in here might be a thunderbird. Those were the different spirits that go back that far. So, what kind of rock is this? Well, it's really hard. They said they tried getting a similar slab from a local quarry and tried making petroglyph, and it took a very strong guy quite a bit of time using another rock that was harder, the local rock, but it was sedimentary in nature, in that it is a dried mud flat that at some point was raised up or uncovered, and it's a sacred place, basically. So we don't know who came here 7,000 years ago, what those people called themselves. I assume they figured this outcropping of rock in the middle of the prairie was sacred. It was Mother Earth coming up, but eventually the people that were here were the ancestors of Shawnee, Iowa, Prairie, Ponca, Omaha, Mandan, Crow, Datsa, and the Dakota Indians. So all the people, basically, think about it, tribes of the prairies. A lot of them were here, Minnesota and so on, and ended up getting pushed farther west, where we're more familiar with them being. So what do you think this is? I mean, it's got 4 legs.
Oh, it's a hand.
Or it's a hand. It's a big hand.
Yep.
Turn it around here.
And it's actually a reference to a constellation. We know the constellation today as Orion.
So that's the carvings part of this place, and they do have like a 3/4 mile long prairie trail that just waters out through the prairies, and I need to do some walking. And let's see, this is the Florence Cook Wolfer Prairie Trail, and she was a early leader in preserving these rock climbings and the first site manager. So I'm going to take a walk down this trail and get to back near the visitor center, and there's something called the Buffalo Rub, and we'll see what that is before we leave. Oh, if you look closely, you can see a rut over there and another one at my feet going down that way and off, and I aren't sure what did it or what they were. Stagecoach, but whatever, traveled enough to make these ruts, and the nearest stagecoach line was 15 miles away. So my mind is there probably was a farm out here somewhere on the prairie, and that was their wagon road back into the town. Would have been a lot of trips back and forth to town to make that rut, because it's a good at least 8 inches deep. Of course, muddy springs, you could make a deep rut fast. So imagine you're a bison. It's spring. You want to shed your winter coat, but you know, a little short neck, you really can't get back there. You're in a prairie with 500,000 of your brothers, and they're all around that tree over there. And then you happen to notice this outcrop of rock. And this, where it's all smooth and shiny, as opposed to like the dull finish, that's years and years, thousands of years, like from 9,000 years ago, of bison rubbing up against this rock to get that winter coat off. This is what a buffalo rub is. And with that, I think I will say goodbye to Jeffers Petroglyphs, the buffalo rub, and get back on the road and see what other kinds of cool stuff I can find. See you later, YouTube.
Jumped off the wagon and he spread out his hands. Brace yourselves and come for your women. We will do